Welcome to Inside the Game on the National Soccer Network. Now, here are your hosts, Jonathan Turner and Nathan Wangler.
And welcome back into Inside the Game here. It is Thursday. It is July the 3rd, just one day away from fireworks. Even though fireworks are happening all over the country right now, every single night, it seems like fireworks
in every neighborhood.
In every neighborhood, yep. But welcome back into Inside the Game. I'm Jonathan Turner alongside Nathan Wengler. Yes, I am back in my home office here this morning, and we'll combination of that here in the coming days and weeks and months and whatnot. But either way, we want to get into this right away. A lot of things happening in the soccer world here yesterday. We'll talk Gold Cup this morning. We're going to talk the USL2 and USLW playoffs this morning. We're going to talk WPSL. We'll get into a bunch of stuff. We'll even take some comments from the mailbag segment, as we call it, because we had a lot of comments from yesterday's show and the things that we posted to social media. So we'll get into that. But yesterday, some tragic news hitting the world news in regards to soccer. Diogo Jota from Liverpool passing away tragically at the age of 28 yesterday. And so obviously our heart and our condolences go out to him and his family in Liverpool in regards to that tragic loss. It puts things in perspective. We talked about it here a few weeks back when we talked about a local referee here who lost his life in a car accident, Rob Ruda. And, again, it's when tragedy does strike, you find out kind of how people react, and you kind of start to see the inner workings of how the community comes together, and the soccer community is extremely strong, and you see players all around the world showing their support and love and admiration for Diego and his family.
Yeah, and it's I'm 28, right? So I feel like I have so much in life left to prove that it would be tragic to have that cut short. And the reality is that I've known a handful of people in my life that have had their lives cut short because of being in incidents like that, car crashes, stuff that really in a lot of ways you can't handle, you can't control, and for it to come back and for something like that to happen, I think it's a shock. But again, it's always a reminder. And I said this, when we were talking about this, what only felt like a month ago, is that, life we're always living on borrowed time. And so I think these are the moments where it's important to remember that the most important thing in life is to just treat people with kindness and respect. Always be kind, always be nice, because we're only here for a short amount of time. So it really doesn't feel like, you don't have to be mean to people. You don't have to tear people down, because if we're only going to be here for a short amount of time and we're always living on borrowed time, then we may as well enjoy the time that we have together. And obviously I don't need to know the kid. I didn't need to meet him to know that he made a positive impact on a lot of people, not just through his play on the field, but I'm sure who he was as an individual too, and his work ethic and his dedication and everything to get him to where he went and where he ended up. So yeah, it's tragic, man, but it does teach you a lot in these moments about how, even the greats, even the good ones, sometimes they go way too soon, and it's not fair. None of it's fair. He didn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that. But that's why we talk about this game every day, because we want to celebrate, the great young men and women that play this sport and that sacrifice everything to be in a position, really in a lot of ways, for our entertainment, because as much as we treat this as a business, it is, at the end of the day, it's a sport, it's an escape from life. And so when someone like himself is able to go out and play at a high level, it in a lot of ways, he's, it's not like he's my therapist, but he kind of takes away from some of the things that we go through every single day, because we just get to sit back and watch athletes like himself put on amazing displays day after day. So it's tragic, man. And again, it just puts everything in perspective. So yeah, thoughts and prayers to the family. And He was great. I mean, he made an impact. He made an impact. He changed people's lives in a positive way. And really, at the end of the day, when we talk about our lives and what we want to get out of it, that's what you want to do. As long as you've made an impact, as long as you've made an impression, left your mark, then you've done your job. So, yeah, it's really hard. But yeah, thoughts and prayers to the family.
Yeah, and he had just gotten married here just a short time ago. So in the last few days. So obviously, the tragedy can strike any time, and that's why it's important to really understand. But yeah, understand how fragile life is, and as you mentioned, how short our time on this planet actually is. So, but again, our heart and condolences, our prayers go out to his family and the soccer community affected, impacted by his loss. Yesterday, we talked a great deal about U.S. men's national team. A great deal. But what we haven't talked a lot about is the U.S. women's national team. And the world has, we've talked about this in the women's game specifically, is that, the women, not saying that they used to have an easy go of it, because I don't think that you could ever argue, I don't think you could ever argue that they had it easy. But for a period of time there, in the mid 90s, right, maybe the early 90s through the early 2000s, you could argue that, the U.S. women's national team was going to roll on basically everybody they played, except for three teams, like Japan, like Australia, and Sweden. Like those were like the three teams that it was like kind of like you just never knew what you're going to get in those matchups. I feel like, but every other team they were going to roll.
Yeah.
Right. And now they still roll teams. I don't think there's any dispute about that. But again, the way the women's game has evolved is that countries around the world now are in fact investing in women's soccer. Right, we're seeing that and again, the access to the leagues now, which again did not exist 20 years ago, did not exist 30 years ago, and so when the women's team plays, add China into that mix as well. So four teams, and again, you can argue there's three or four teams in there that would just create some havoc for the U.S. women's national team. But I think it's important to talk about what Emma Hayes has been able to do, because there was some disruption there with the previous head coach of the U.S. women's national team. Right, we know that was an area of contention amongst people here in this country when you start talking about the former head coach of the U.S. women's national team prior to Emma Hayes. And, and Nathan, my question for you as we talk about coaches, and we talked about Pochettino yesterday, the game of soccer when it comes to the female environment, how important it is to have a female head coach in that realm. I'm not a female myself, but I would imagine that can really be a beneficial factor in managing a team.
Oh, it makes all the difference in the world. I think you can relate to certain things as a female coaching females that maybe if you weren't, that you wouldn't really catch on to. And we know successful coaches in other sports, that kind of cross that barrier. I think of, Gio Auriemma is a good example of, what he did at UConn. But, I think in a lot of ways it does 100% help to have someone in there that can relate, that's been through the process. I mean, it's no different than talking about, why it might be important to have an American-born coach American-born players, but they've been through the system. They've seen it. And, for this women's national team, they just had their recent, homecoming for a couple of players in Colorado where they had that 4-0 win over Ireland. But what's even more exciting to me is that they're actually getting a lot of stars back. Rose Lavelle just came back off of injury, so she just rejoined that team, looked really good in that game against Ireland. I mean, she was in top form for that squad. So, and, much like we see, even over on the men's side, they've gone younger, which is, I think, really inspiring to see, because the development of women's soccer in the U.S. is something to really behold because of just how skilled and how young a lot of the players are in the United States that are coming up, especially in the women's ranks. I mean, I think about, we were going to talk about USL too, and I'll even go over to USLW with Midwest United. London Spencer, who's playing for that USLW team, who finished the season with a handful of assists. I think 3 of them, also had a goal mixed in there. He's 12 years old. He's 12 years old playing with high school and college kids. Like I don't know what I was doing at 12. I certainly was not doing that at 12. I was not playing at a high competitive level at that age. But we talk about like the future, and all these clubs want to discover what the next big thing is. Someone like London Spencer could be exactly that. I mean, at 12, if you're competing at that level, I mean, let's think. When do you start high school, JT? What age?
14.
What is it?
I'd argue maybe. Yeah, I mean,
so
you might be an old 13, I guess, maybe making your way in, but 14 is probably it.
2 years away from high school, and she's already doing what she's doing. I mean, it's outstanding to see. So, they got a couple of important matchups coming up. I know that this team, and obviously getting Rose Lavelle back off of injury, Naomi Girma continues to dominate as well. She's going to be a front runner. But they have such a good collection of players. And I think there's kind of redemption on this team's mind, because you're right. For the first time, especially during that last Women's World Cup, we saw that tension in the room. Like we hadn't, you went back-to-back World Cups and you go through the era of dominance that you did. But again, people just kind of, I don't know if they tune it out a little bit. And we got one obviously scathing review, one scathing comment. And I had acknowledged that I don't think it's fair that they don't get an equal amount of coverage sometimes, simply because we just expect them to go out and win. Like if anything, that should lend itself to covering them more, talking about them more, because they're a powerhouse. And so I think that is important. And it's nice that going into this World Cup, it's one thing when you do it time in and time out and people just expect you to be there. The expectations change when you talk about the last World Cup and them getting bounced out, and the kind of the friction and the tension in the room. I know that they just played Canada, so we can cover some of that too, but it's given them that little that extra boost, to continue moving in the right direction. And so I'm really proud of their performance. Like I said, I think having Rose back is huge for this team. That's another big component of them moving in the correct direction. But we're also starting to see those rivalries build at the same exact time too, because of just how much the rest of the world is investing in women's soccer at the same exact time. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things to love about what they have going for them right now.
Yeah, no question about that. We talked quite a bit yesterday about the U.S. men's national team. I want to dive back into that this morning. The Gold Cup semifinals taking place yesterday. The U.S. men's national team winning 2-1 in that Gold Cup, advancing to their 13th Gold Cup final in the history. And me and you, we got into it a little bit yesterday. Yeah, maybe a little bit, which is a good back and forth that we had in the show. And when I look at what happened yesterday, I think you should ask me if my opinion has changed of what we talked about. I think well,
I don't even need to ask. I was ready this morning. I was ready coming in. I'm like, oh boy.
Has my opinion changed of this U.S. men's national team? My opinion has not changed of the women. Okay, I still believe the U.S. women's national team is exactly where they need to be. They are in a fantastic spot to continue on with their success. They have players coming back. They have players in depth. They are, the thing that they have to worry about is continuing to stay one step ahead of their competition, right? That's the one thing that is the biggest challenge, right? Because when we talk about their history, they have been, in most cases, sometimes 2, 3, and maybe even 4 steps ahead of their competition. And right now we can argue in a lot of examples that they're probably only 1 step or maybe even a half a step ahead of their competition, which lends them to having the struggles of winning consistently. But don't be mistaken, their record since Emma Hayes took over is like 22 and I think 1. I want to say that if I'm not mistaken. So it's like she has obviously done a fantastic job. Yes, her record is 21 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses in all competitions since she took over. Okay, and I would have to look U.S. men's national team time during that same. I would have to Google that, Nathan, to find out.
Yeah,
Record during
depth too, man. I mean, that's the other side of it too. I mean, even yesterday versus Canada, you had 3 different goal scorers, right? You have Sam Coffey, you have Claire Hutton, and then you have Yasmin Ryan at the end there, put one in the 89th minute. And Canada's no pushover too. I think people tend to forget that. When you talk about this matchup. And so, even you just look at the rankings, I mean, Canada's up there. Right now, the U.S. is first, but Canada's in 8th. And, I mean, they just dropped a spot, obviously, because of the loss. But
we are 12, 7, and 6 is what the U.S. men's national team is in the last 2 years. So 24, 25. So 12 wins, 7 draws, and 6 losses. And so, again, during that same time period, the women, 20 wins, 2 ties, and a loss, right? So you think about that, and so that's a significant difference. And so when we start talking about comparing one versus the other, to be fair, it's not fair to compare, right, those environments. But there is no comparable to the success the women team has had compared to that to the men's.
Yeah.
And I think we should always, as profound as that might be,
yeah.
And we might be remiss sometimes to not even talk about it because to be fair, it's like we expect them to win. Like we expect the women every time they step up and go out onto a pitch to win a soccer game.
Well, and isn't it uniquely beautiful, the fact that the Americans in the sport of women's soccer have kind of forced the hand of the rest of the world to go, okay, it's time to invest in women's sports. It's time to invest in developing women's sports to a level to where you can compete with the United States. Because we know how much it frustrates the rest of the world when the U.S. does well in old footy. That doesn't sit well with the rest of the world.
I think it's also important to talk about, because we don't get into politics a lot. We don't. We steer clear of that. But I think it's okay. Where July 4th is tomorrow. You're talking about celebrating your independence.
Right.
And talking about, think about this for a second. With all the things going on in our world, all the chaos, all the screaming and yelling at one another, the one thing that you can sit here and talk about and say it with pride is that the women's national team, regardless of all the things that go on as far as how much you get paid and all that kind of stuff, like what they've been able to achieve in women's and in the women's sporting environment is something that will stand the test of time.
Yeah.
And it could only have been done here.
Yeah.
It could not have been done anywhere else, or else it would have been done already. Mm-hmm. And so culturally, politically, whatever your opinions might be, the U.S. Women's national team flourished because of the United States of America.
Yeah.
And now the rest of the world is going to be a benefactor in that. And so it's really, really important to say that, you know, and again, it wouldn't have happened anywhere else, because if it did, it would have already happened, you know. And so I think it's really important to say that. And Michael's saying, hey, Title IX played a major factor. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely it did. Title IX changed the sporting environment in this country from top to bottom.
Yeah.
And again, all the other nuances of the politics and the financial and all the other things, putting that aside for a second and just talking about that's a really important factor. And I think that we would, especially with July 4th being tomorrow and a lot of different, you know, people's opinions about how good, bad, or whatever you want to call the United States of America. I think it's really easy when you're able to say the things that you're able to say to the world, to forget what we're able to actually do and how really unique our country truly is.
Right.
All you have to do is when you watch Mexico versus the United States on Sunday night, and just watch as the national anthems are playing. Just watch the teams. Look at Team USA, look at Team Mexico, and you tell me what those teams look like. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, because if you watch Team China, Team Japan, they all look Japanese. They all look Chinese. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. In the United States, you see all these different different backgrounds and characteristics of players on our teams. Because there are so many different, different types of cultures and people that live here. It's an amazing thing to see.
Right.
And you don't get that anywhere else.
Mm-mm.
For the most part, you don't get that. So it's
Yeah.
really, really cool. And it's real easy for us all to go, man, like, that really sucks over there. And this is terrible over here. It is. But, like, looking at, like, the Olympic teams, Team USA in any sport, we are vastly, just the rosters look so different, and it's an unbelievable thing to see.
Right.
And you don't get that anywhere else. You don't get that
Yeah.
anywhere else.
No.
It's like,
Yeah.
and it's because of how our country was formed, and it's really cool to think about, and especially as July 4th tomorrow.
It's okay to celebrate those things. It's okay. Yeah, well, we got issues. That's fine. You can acknowledge that, but like a day like tomorrow, it's not about it's not about the president, guys. It's not about one person or the other. It's about the people who did die and sacrifice what they had going and everything, life, in order for us to be in a position to where we could prioritize breaking down inequality and allowing sports like women's soccer in the United States the chance to thrive. You can't tell me that they don't have the resources in these other countries, but you can tell me conclusively that inequality in a lot of these different countries across the world is still very much alive and well. I mean, you think about certain countries, women weren't allowed to drive until just a handful of years ago. So we, in a lot of ways, put the pressure on the rest of the world to say, listen, it's time. It's time that you start investing in the women in your country and giving them equal opportunities to go out and thrive and really make an impact on the international scale. I love it. I absolutely love it. That's what we're celebrating tomorrow.
That we are. And as we talk about the U.S. men's national team and their success here yesterday, and obviously on a 5-0 run in their last 5 games, and me and you, again, we got into this yesterday, and I want to get into it right now. And I asked this question, do you think my opinion has changed? Obviously, my opinion has not changed. And it has nothing to do with the outcome of yesterday. And I even said, if they lose tomorrow, that might be a good thing for us to talk about. Or you lose yesterday, that might be a good thing for us to talk about this morning. And I'm not rooting for Team USA to lose. I think that's an important thing for me to state here. I'm not hoping for them to lose. But there's this thing about being rock bottom, that's really important to happen. What does rock bottom look like? I mean, I don't know if U.S. men's national team has actually hit rock bottom yet. Maybe we could argue that they have, but in order for a problem to be solved, you have to acknowledge that first there's a problem, right? I think it's like step one in any recovery situation is acknowledging you have a problem, and that maybe you don't know how to solve it. And so do I think that we've hit rock bottom at U.S. men's national team? I don't think we have yet. You could argue that the not qualifying years ago for the World Cup was rock bottom for us. I don't think it was. Because if it was, I don't know if we'd be here in this moment right now, right? Where the core roster that we're supposed to have leading into the World Cup isn't even participating in a tournament, and we're trying to figure out if these pieces that are currently playing are even going to be on the roster in a year, right? That's what we're talking about. Diego Luna, is he going to be on the roster? Now, do I think he's earned the right to be in the conversation? Absolutely. 3 goals in 2 games. Scoring 2 goals yesterday, right? I mean, beating Guatemala. Is it a signature win? No, it's not. Matt Freese making a couple big saves yesterday. Has he earned a spot to be in the conversation? I think he has. He definitely has. But we talked about this despair yesterday. I did. This team is in despair. Okay? And how do we get them out of it? How do you get Team USA?
Games.
Huh?
By winning games.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Again, we talked about this yesterday. Winning games. Yeah, winning games. Yeah, consistency matters, right? It does. And winning soccer games is extremely important. I'm not going to dispute that aspect of this. With that being said, when we talk about a World Cup year, right? This team would not qualify for the World Cup. If they were having to qualify right now, they would not qualify. Does anyone on any level agree with that statement? Would they actually make it? That's the question I have. Would this team, current team in CONCACAF, qualify for a World Cup?
I mean, we can play hypotheticals all we want.
Well, no, I think it's important to ask that question. Would this team qualify? The current leadership, the current players, the current personnel, would this team qualify for the World Cup? I think it's an important question that we should ask. I'm curious people's thoughts on this because I don't think they'd qualify.
Yeah, maybe not. I mean, I think it's important that we talk about what did happen, but I guess, I certainly think they would, but how that all goes about, I'm not exactly sure. But my whole thing is this, and I know that you had mentioned it a little bit earlier, even before we came on the air, that you believe that I thought that a winning streak was worth something, and that maybe it wasn't worth as much as what initially I believed, and even getting to the finals and winning 5 straight games, that's just, again, it's obsolete. It's just a footnote. But JT, here's my thing. I am, in a lot of ways, I'm sick and tired of people calling this a B or a C side.
Whose side?
I'm sick and tired of people calling this a B or a C side for the United States.
Why?
Okay. Because they're winning games. It's not about the club you're playing in. It's not about the big ego players. It's not about that. It's about the form on the field. It's about the team and how they look when they're playing, right? And winning games is a byproduct of that. You even said that this morning before we came on the show. The most important stat is not how many shots. It's not how many shots on goal. It's what the score is at the end of the game. Now, again, is beating Guatemala a game changer? No. And I love the comment. I love it. Because with every time they win a game, it's, okay. Well, they're going to lose the next one.
I'm not going to talk about the competition. The competition's irrelevant at this point. I mean, and again,
form on the field is the most important thing that we're looking at here.
We talked about this, again, in the thing. There was many years ago that Detroit Tigers had one of the best starts in baseball. And they finished, I think, dead last and had lost more games than anybody else in the history of mankind. Right. And so, why was it? And we could argue that they didn't have the talent, and you can call them the B Tigers, but they are the Detroit Tigers. They just didn't have a really good team. We had a home run. I think we had 19 home. Chris Shelton had like 19 home runs in 19 games, something crazy like
back right there, Chris Shelton.
Yeah, it was some. And he didn't finish the season playing for the team, and we can talk all day long about that. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to call them a B team. I'm not going to say that. But this is not the team. This is not the team.
And
so the team, and more importantly, when we talk about the team that's going to be playing here in 11 months, what would that team look like against the teams that are currently playing right now in this tournament? You know what I mean? Would they roll on them? Would it be a significant victory? Because again, some
guys are taking positions. I 100% think some guys on this team are taking.
When you say taking a position, what do you mean?
Like earning their spot, which means we might have to shift some of the other players around. Diego Luna should be on that World Cup roster in 2026.
Okay.
Every single American should know the name Diego Luna. Every single American. It's a 3rd goal in 2 games. And the way he plays the games, his shiftiness with the ball on his foot, everything. He scores a brace, his first, by the way, in his career in the first 15 minutes after getting his first international goal in his previous game. I want to ask you this because you wanted to bring up the Tigers and they're starting Chris Shelton. That's a throwback right there, man. That's
remember Brandon Inge in the home run derby couldn't even hit a home run.
Oh yeah, former West Michigan Whitecap. I do remember that though, man. That's
what a rough.
Not a good look. But let's talk about like this offseason for the Tigers, right? Torque, Was he going to make the team or was he going to start in Toledo? Well, he's one of the best first basemen in the entire American League right now. Javier Baez, your boy, Neil Rule, spent, I think, at least 2 months talking about how he's the scum of the earth, and now he's going to the All-Star game. So, Neil, if you're out there listening, how about them cookies? Also, there were also about 3 or 4 other players that we were curious were even going to make an impact. And what were all of the Tigers fans saying? Right? Okay, we need a big signing. We need to go get Alex Bregman. We need to go get one of these guys. We need a star on this team, right? The young guys just aren't cutting it. And what are the young guys doing right now? Young guys are the best team in the American League. Now, I know this is apples to oranges, the comparison. What's up, Peter? Welcome back, buddy. I feel like you've missed a few episodes. I've been missing you on here. I know that it's an apples to oranges comparison. And I know that we can't necessarily equate both, and not everybody's going to relate to our Tiger talk because they don't know the Detroit Tigers, but we're from Michigan, so we know it a little bit better. But this is where I come with all this. We trashed on this team and the young guys and the young prospects that were either hurt or injured or not producing. But the entire time the Tigers are going, no, they're gelling. Okay, this is a group that is going through the growing pains together. And we need to give them an opportunity to shine. We can't block them with talented players. We can't go out and make a huge signing and then put those guys in front of them because they don't understand the culture. They haven't been here. And just simply because they're good players doesn't mean that all of a sudden you filter in a bunch of top egos that you're going to be better. And what did? They didn't block these guys. They allowed them to grow. They allowed them to mature. They allowed them to go through the crap and really kind of embrace what it is that the media was telling them, which is you're not good enough. And what do? They go out, they win games, right? They had, what was it, a 0.5% chance of making the playoffs last year, 0.2% chance, and they did it. Like that is the benefit of having a group that knows how to play together. And that's why I say I get tired and frustrated of people saying that this is a B/C side and well, what's going to happen? You know, is this going to be no, it's not going to be the same exact group come the World Cup. It's not. It shouldn't be. But there is a benefit to letting them learn and grow and develop and win together. That was something that Diego Luna said to the media after the game. He said it straight up. He literally embraced everything that we're talking about on here. Like how America wanted to see all of those things, the grit, the fight, the passion, the forwardness, right? And again, winning is just a byproduct of all that. And they're doing all that. They're checking all of those boxes. You know, here's the part that I agree with you on this. You know, I think it's important in order to have healthy debate, we have to find common ground, right? That's step number 1. So for you and I, the common ground here is that our best players have an ego problem. Our best players do not want to be a part of that growing stage. Now, I can't, and there's a lot of different players that can't relate to that. Landon Donovan is one of them. You saw we were talking about the women's national team to open the show. A lot of them have been very outspoken about the fact that they can't relate to being called on by their country and just not showing up. Okay, there are a lot of different players. And by the way, I thought rock bottom was 4-0 to Switzerland. I thought that was probably rock bottom for this team. But a lot of them said they can't relate to it, and neither can a lot of us. And so that's when I say, you know, when we continue to call this a B/C side, no, in my mind, this is the group. Now, if you want to put in Pulisic, obviously, I don't think we're going to the World Cup without him. You can't go to the World Cup without him. Put him in there. But, you know, if you want to take Ajiman out and replace him with somebody else, because I thought he looked rough last night, that's okay. There are different things you can do to tweak this lineup, but the foundation has been set now. Okay? I realize we want to talk about Mexico on Sunday. I think even if this team figures out a way to play a close game and they lose a close game to Mexico, the foundation has been set for this team. That's my takeaway. I'm not saying it's the be-all, end-all. I know that you said your expectations the other day is that they're going to win the Gold Cup, as they should. As they should. It should always be that. But this is where it all comes into play. That stuff matters. And everyone in the U.S. should know the name Diego Luna. And they should start marketing Diego Luna. And I think it comes down to, in a lot of ways, JT, and I know we can get to our mailbag because there's always people that weigh in on these conversations whenever we have them. But it's also, you know, I know we made fun of it earlier because we're like, it feels like a glorified tryout in the Gold Cup to figure out, you know, who's good, who's not. I think Matt Freese is entered into the conversation. I think Diego Luna deserves a conversation. I think Malik Tillman, with his 3rd assist in this Gold Cup, certainly deserves a starting spot on that team coming up in the 2026 World Cup. From an individual basis, we're learning a lot. Okay. Does it mean everything in the world that they beat Guatemala? No. Would it even mean everything in the world if they found a way to beat Mexico in the final and bring home a Gold Cup? No. Like, I'm not saying it does. But that stuff does matter. I don't agree with the sentiment that they're in, quote, disarray. That's where I tend to disagree. Now, if you want to put it on the shoulders of the individual players themselves that opted out, sure, let's talk about it. Because I think it's ridiculous. I still think it's ridiculous all these weeks later. But I think that stuff does matter.
Okay. So
Okay.
a lot to unpack there. First and foremost, again, I can't put a I wish I had like a magic ball, that looked into the future and showed me kind of like what could be here in 11 months. But what I'll tell you is this. The foundation that you speak of, right? What foundation? Like what foundation are we talking about? The foundation has been laid, and losing 4-0 to Switzerland is rock bottom. We think that's rock bottom.
I would say so. Yeah.
Okay. But what foundation are you speaking of?
Their form on the field.
Their form on the field.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
they're missing 8 out of their 15 regulars? Missing 8. So 8 players who would normally be in the lineup are not in the lineup right now currently. And so you're using legitimately every player that you would have. The only thing that we're building foundationally right now is our depth. That is the only thing that we're building right now. Okay, that's the only thing that's been built. Because, again, there is not a coach on earth that is going to take this squad that we're currently seeing on the field and go and compete in a World Cup and have any success. And that's not meant to be a knock on the players themselves. And again, when we're talking about the World Cup, and when I was talking about this weeks ago about like, hey, I would love to see this grittiness. Yes, absolutely. Because the grittiness is what does, in a lot of cases, get you closer to a victory when you are lacking something. Right? But you do need talent. And this team doesn't have enough of it. Even with the better players that are still not playing, doesn't have enough of it. We already talked about that. And in the comments, people are talking about this team has no hope of winning World Cup, even if you take the best players that we are currently don't have and put them on the field. We know that. And our best option, our best hope in 11 months is for us to be getting into the round of 16, right? Getting into the 8, right? That's our goal. It's not to win it, right? It's to get there, get out of your group stage. But when you say foundation, okay, this is vastly different than any other environment. Every nation is going to put their 20 best players, 22 best players that they have, 25 best players that they have ever on the field next year. And these players that we're talking about right now on the field, they aren't it. Now, they might be 3 in there. There might be 4 in there that make it to our 26, to our roster that we end up, saying, hey, this is the players that are rostered for the World Cup. This might be 4 or 5 of them in there. Again, I'd have to look at the roster top to bottom and say, okay, which one? Okay. Maybe it's 7 players in there, of which maybe one of them would be a potential starter. You know what I mean? Yeah, Diego Luna has been fantastic. He's been great. I'm not going to discount what he's done on the field. And yes, I do think that every American should know his name because he is right now leading the charge for the U.S. men's national team. But in the whole scheme of things, what does that mean? In the whole big scheme of things, what does it mean? If we're talking about a non-World Cup year, me and you are having a completely different debate. me and you are having a completely different conversation, right? And that's why I asked this question, if hypothetically, if this team would even qualify for the World Cup. It does matter. Even though it's a hypothetical, it does matter. Because is this team ready to compete for a World Cup? No.
Is the team, if you add in those 8 other players, are we ready to compete for a World Cup?
No. Nope.
So then what do we have to lose?
What do we have to lose?
What do we have to lose?
It's on our home soil.
I get that.
It's on our home soil. Like, legitimately, they keep saying this will be the biggest World Cup ever.
Okay.
And our team will be what?
So what's the
Question
ceiling
mark.
if you add in those 8 players?
What's the ceiling?
What's the ceiling?
At this
Losing
point,
to Panama?
getting out of the group would be like the ceiling.
Losing to Canada? Is that the ceiling? I mean, losing to Panama, losing to Canada.
Well, I wouldn't say that's the ceiling. It's the floor. I don't know if that's the ceiling.
Right. But that's what we saw out of them last.
Well, yeah. Well, and there is something to be said about like not caring in certain environments. I think that there is this mentality of players who just don't care in certain moments, in friendlies and things that don't matter, right? These nation cups, these nation things that we've created to create, whatever. I don't. Again, I can't speak to the players and their mentality, but I think that there's so much soccer happening that it's hard for players to focus on that tournament, that game, when, again, they only come together for 2 weeks at a time, and then they go play in a tournament. Yes, our best players need to want to play for their country. Okay, we want our best players to want to play for their country. And while the women's national team doesn't necessarily understand from their perspective why players wouldn't want to play for their country, we talked about this. If you are a player right now and you are playing a high-level competition and you feel like you're taking a step down to come play, you aren't going to go in that environment unless you have to. And that's the environment that we're talking about right now. Christian Pulisic is taking a step down to come play for the U.S. men's national team. He's not going to an equal footing or stepping up. He is stepping down. That's a real thing. And so, why would you risk heart, mind, body, soul, whatever you want to call it, and to do that? It's because you're wearing the U.S. men's national team logo on your shirt? I would argue that I would absolutely do it. But I'm also not being paid $40 million a year to go play soccer. You know what I mean? I'll take $1 million.
Yeah.
But that's but herein lies the problem. You're taking a step down if you're Christian Pulisic. You're not taking a step up. You're not coming over here and playing an equal footing. The team is made up of a bunch of players who don't have the same level of quality of talent that he's used to playing with across the pond. And what are you risking? Especially in a World Cup year. And again, that's the problem, because he doesn't want to go get hurt for, doesn't want to get hurt, doesn't want to, hurt his chances of competing for a cup across the pond. These are all real things that he has to deal with, and we can debate it all day long about how we don't agree with it, but it's the reality. And so when I talk about the despair, that's the despair. You know what I mean? That is the despair that we're talking about. When your best player refuses to come play for the team and quote unquote needs a sabbatical, but really he just doesn't want to play for this team right now. That's what it is. And again, there's not a coach. Pochettino's not going to not play Christian Pulisic. The political pressures from inside U.S. soccer, he is the U.S. men's national team, like, poster player. He is. So you're not going to play him. Like, he's not. He's in it.
Right.
Good, bad, or indifferent. He's in it.
Mm-hmm.
Now who's his supporting cast? To be fair, this is like the Superman movie that's coming out here like tomorrow.
Is it a new Superman movie?
I know, right? See?
I didn't know that. All right.
It's coming out tomorrow, I think. I think it's out this week. Anyway, it's coming out.
You're going to go to the movies?
No, I'm not going to the movies. But I'm just saying, saying that the new movie, right? And so I think we are like DC Comics in movie land with the U.S. men's national team. That's what we're like. Nobody wants to watch DC comic movies. They don't know, but you want to go with the Marvel Universe, the Avengers? Everyone wanted to watch that. Who does a better job in the movies, DC Comics or Marvel? Marvel's always done better, right? So it's like you talk about Captain America. We need the U.S. men's national team to be like Marvel, not like DC Comics. I mean, I know I'm going a completely different route here, but it's like, but that's what we need. We need this team to put up a really good show. But who's his supporting cast? Who's his supporting cast? Who is going to help him in 2025? Sorry, 2026. And so, when I say what's the foundation? Great, we're building a great depth. We're building a great depth right now. And what will that do for us in 26? Time will tell. Time will tell. Yes, you can only face the opponents who are in front of you, and you're beating those teams, and that's great. It's fantastic. It's good for the cause, right? It's good. Winning on Sunday will be great for the U.S. men's national team, especially with this team who goes out there and learns how to win in an international environment, in a tournament, in their home on their home soil. But how many players from this team will be on the roster starting in 26? And I believe it's not many. And how do you build on that? How do you build on it? And, again, you only get, 6 subs in a game? You only get 6 subs, so, you can't make a lot of mistakes. You can't make a lot of changes in a soccer game, right? This isn't like basketball where you can rotate in a full roster 100 times in a game. You know what I mean? You can't do that. Hockey, you're rotating every 40 seconds. You know what I mean? Like here in soccer, you get 6 subs a game.
Right.
You make a bad decision as a coach. A player goes down. Now you have 5 subs, right? You don't have a lot of opportunity to make changes in a game, so you are relying heavily on what this team, these 11 players can do. And then obviously you have a great supporting cast, and every good coach has 15 players that they rely on.
Mm-hmm.
Every coach, 15 players. Your goal is to have 15. Where those 4, the 12 through 15, those players, they could be in the 11. Maybe they're missing something. Maybe they're missing one small piece, or they're a little tweaking here. They could be in the 11, but they're not. Right? They could be rotated in or out. Right? But 16 through 22, 16 through 26, that's a toss-up. And so I want to see this team, from my perspective, yes, going out and winning on Sunday would be huge. You obviously are solidifying depth for the World Cup. I want to see what happens with these 8 players who didn't play in this tournament. I want to see how they come in, interact with this team afterwards. Yeah. In their first friendly. I think the next friendly they have is going to be sometime in December.
September. They got Japan and South Korea.
I would like to see, hopefully, that team come back with this mix. And then we can start to see, okay, what does this look like? Because that, to me, would be like, this start to be the telltale sign.
Right.
And right now we don't have that. And again, will I see a Christian Pulisic in September? Right. Probably not. But I'm hopeful that we'll start to see him playing in this team here as they get ready for a World Cup here in like I said, less than 11 months.
Yeah.
But let's get to...
Well, I want to get into the mailbag really quick. I just wanted to cap this off by saying maybe it took those guys stepping away for us to figure it out. Maybe it took that. Like, sometimes you have to cut bait. And not cut bait, right, because they are coming back. But sometimes you have to take a step back in order to take a step forward. Like we were mentioning, like recovery earlier. Yeah, admitting you have a problem. But sometimes it takes stepping back to see the entire picture in order to take that leap forward that we want to take. Okay, and so that, to me, is the value of this. And we took a step back without knowing whether or not we were going to be able to get to the point that we're at and going to the final. I just don't. They can only control what they can control, and that's beating the team in front of them. But in order to get there, we needed to go back a step in order to leap forward. So I think to that degree, again, the form on the field has looked great. I think Mauricio Pochettino has these guys moving in a different way. I think they're playing angry. I think they have something to prove, and all of those things are great. Now what happens when we mix the guys back in? hopefully it only adds to what we have, which is that if we're talking about they're the greatest players we have, it will only add to it.
Yeah.
But now that we're into the final 10, we can get into the mailbag a little bit. We got a few different good ones on TikTok. By the way, we appreciate all you guys who follow our social media accounts, talking about this team, talking about soccer all the time. We got a lot of good stuff. This is like the prime time for us too, with how many different things we have going on. But we got a few really good comments on this. Scott Miller chimes in. We were talking about how you still didn't think Mauricio Pochettino was the man for the job. Scott says someone was never taught the difference between correlation and causation. Not saying the U.S. men's national team will win the World Cup. I don't think any of us believe that, for what it's worth. But this is a weak argument. Could it possibly be that the best footballing nations don't have to get foreign coaches because their domestic ones know the game so well? I think what he's saying is, would there even be someone who's American-born who would be a better fit for that job? So thanks for chipping in, Scott. Although you're trying to kind of tear down JT's opinion over here, but that's I mean, and even David says, what American is on Poach's level? None. And I think it's worth saying, but at the same exact time, when you look at all the different Americans players who are in the media now, you're telling me not a single one of them would want to get into coaching? You're telling me not a single one of them would want to take on the responsibility of bringing this team to that level? A lot of them have had success. Where do you fall on that?
Okay. So I'll wave the white flag in saying that Pochettino is probably the most qualified coach, right? To lead, a team like the U.S. men's national team. But my perspective on this is that we are trying to redevelop. We are trying to not evolve the wheel here in the United States. We're trying to we're trying to like remake it or start a new wheel. We are not other countries. I've said this numerous times here before. We don't need to play the game the way the Europeans play the game. We have to play the way Americans play. We are a physical, gritty, hard-working type of soccer environment, and we are trying too much and spending too much time trying to create an environment in which we knock the ball around and play European style of play. It doesn't work. It will not work for us ever in the history of soccer. I'm saying that right now. It will never work. Okay, so we need to stop playing it that way and start playing it our way. And our way of playing it is being direct, physical, and just outworking other teams. That's how we win soccer games. Period. End of discussion. And the likes of Pochettino, the likes of Jurgen Klinsmann, the likes of anybody else for that matter who wants to come into this environment and do that is never going to be successful ever. Period.
Yeah.
Next comment.
Ryan. Next comment.
Let's go.
Moving on. Ryan Moody III says, problem with U.S. soccer is satisfaction with 4 wins against horrendous talent level teams. It's crazy to always caveat wins while also being able to be taken seriously, also wanting to be taken seriously. He follows that up with saying, am I satisfied? No. I am happy they won. Yes. It's also the teams in our confederation. So that's a lot of talk about, we're playing weak, talented teams. I never said I was satisfied. Okay, let's put that out there. I never said satisfied. Okay, I never put a period on it.
Haven't had your Snickers bar yet, is what you're saying.
My what?
Like,
my who?
You haven't had your Snickers bar. Your Danny DeVito. Like,
No, I think we both need a Snickers bar after the show sometimes, though. Damn, man. These comments. No one said satisfied. No one said satisfied. I'm not saying job's done. No, I mean, the ultimate job is what are you going to do at the World Cup? But when you are in a position to where you don't have to qualify, right? Teams, not saying they don't take it as seriously, but it's clear that our stars haven't taken it as seriously. And we have 8 total players, as you mentioned earlier, JT, that are not a part of this roster in the Gold Cup at a stage in our development where we need to really prove to the American audience that we're going to be able to compete in the 2026 World Cup. Like, this is where we are with this Gold Cup competition, is we need them to prove that they can at least put a group together on the field that can win. Have they done that? Again, not with the best players, but they've won. I'm not saying I'm satisfied. I'm saying I'm excited for certain players like Matt Freese. I think Diego Luna is great. I think he's a great story, right? Someone that grew up in an apartment with his entire family in California. I'm not saying he grew up in poverty, but I mean, that's not necessarily glorious living in an apartment together with your entire family. You know, I wouldn't say he came from the trenches, but maybe the trenches light in California. But he had to fight for everything. He's undersized. He was probably overlooked. Like, that is the stuff that excites me. I'm not saying I'm satisfied with a win over Guatemala and Costa Rica and Haiti and Saudi Arabia and yada, yada. I'm not. But it shows that at least, again, they're finding a way to win. But I also know that you kind of have a difference of opinion on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, satisfied is nowhere near where any of us are. And I don't think there should be a fan in this country that should be satisfied. You know, again, it's about raising the bar. It's about elevating. And are we elevating talent? Are we raising the bar internally? I do think that is happening within this current team that's participating in this tournament. But now once you again, get the players back and reintegrate them back into this environment, what does that look like, and how does that bar continue to be raised? Our expectations, again, I think are at an all-time low. Right? So you don't expect these teams to go out and win anymore, right? And when they do win, you're like, oh, shit, they won. That's great, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, we used to be like, yeah, you should win this game. And now it's like, okay, they did win. But did they really win? Like, you know, did they really? You know, so it's kind of like this double-edged sword. So it's just part of the process. That's why I say we're in despair, because despair isn't necessarily even within what's happening internally with the team. It's just how we view this team. This team is not viewed. I mean, we're talking about a team that's got a 5-game winning streak, or in a final of a Gold Cup, and we're talking about all the negatives.
Yeah. Yeah.
This team is in despair. So there we go. Yeah. Next one, let's go. So
building off of that line, is actually a couple of them on here. I'll start with the one that I read to you a little bit earlier. Jimmy Fermin, I believe it's Fermin. I hope I'm not pronouncing that wrong. Says, this point comes from the, quote, stars deciding not to play, right? The whole despair thing. Here's what we need to ask ourselves, and I would agree with what he's saying here. Would you rather have a team of players that play in higher leagues with big egos, right? Egos get you beat, right? 5 stars get you beat. Or would you ever have a team of players that want to be here, willing to do the extra work for each other? It's not the team we dreamed of on paper, but on field, I think they are fine. Again, the form. It's not pretty, but in football, it doesn't have to be. And then ST87 actually builds off of that. He goes, maybe those, quote, stars who haven't been winners at the national level, which they haven't, aren't what we need. New names will emerge.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I would love someone to give me an example of a professional athlete that doesn't have an ego and isn't always about themselves, that still hasn't had success. I don't know if there's a lot of them out there that haven't. I mean, we can talk all day long about the likes of LeBron James.
Can be cancers in a locker room.
Absolutely can be. Absolutely they can be. But again, right. But we have players who can get coaches fired like by a snap of a finger. Yeah. It happens all the time. Egos are in every locker room, in every environment across the world. And so if you ask me, I want both. You want both. You want players that can go out there and work their ass off, and you want players who are talented, who are egotistical, and they're going to go out there and still do what they do best. You need both.
Yeah.
You do. And again, you're going to sit there and tell me that like Suarez, Ronaldo, Messi don't have egos? Like, come on now. Like, I mean, now granted, they have the ability to back it up.
Yeah.
Like Kobe Bryant, right? You know, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, all these players, the best players ever. Of course they had egos.
Right.
And you can call it maybe ego, chip on their shoulder, whatever you want to call it. They knew who they were, what they're capable of, and every day they went out and they showed it and how they played. They had this way about how they handled themselves on the court. And so we need both. You need a player who's an egotistical maniac who's going to go out there and just play crazy all the time. And you need a player who's grounded and, maybe not grounded, but, physical, gritty, and hardworking and will fight like to the death. Yep. You need both. You need both. And look, if you ever watch the show Ted Lasso, right? Mm-hmm. You watch the show Ted Lasso, there's a player in there. I think the player's name is Jamie in the show, but the best player on the field. Mm-hmm. He had this ego. He had this ego that Ted Lasso just didn't quite understand, trying to kind of manage it, and finally he broke through. And obviously that's coaching. Coaching can change a player's mentality 100%. If you believe in a coach and you believe fundamentally what that coach is doing, then you will change for that coach. There's not. I truly do believe that. It's just sometimes finding that right coach for that one player.
Yeah, and let's hope.
But Jamie Tart. Jamie Tart was the player in Ted Lasso. But that's a perfect example of a player who just had the talent, but had this massive ego. Yeah. Thought he was better than everybody, and it was a cancer to the team. He ended up getting traded, right? And so comes back and has success. I know that's maybe a wrong example because it's a TV show, but you saw it personally firsthand, kind of how that cancer can have an impact on a team. And so, do I think that there's a cancer within U.S. Soccer? Probably. But again, the cancer stems from a fundamental foundational type thing as well. If the team and the foundation of U.S. men's national team soccer was where it needed to be, I don't think that egos would prevail. If you could find a way to eliminate a bunch of that, it would have to be at the foundation. And maybe, you'll have that with this new team. But again, if you're Christian Pulisic and you have players who you think are less than you on the field, you know what I mean? How do you manage that?
Yeah.
How do you and so that too here lies in the problem. So
yeah. I'll finish this off with on a high note. I'll put the cherry on top of episode, what are we on, 112 today?
I think it's 113.
113. All right, look at us.
Yeah.
GHBGNNNHHG2555 on TikTok says this is good content.
Oh, well, that's
look at us.
Well, there you go. A little clap on that little clap. We do want to thank everybody for being a part of what we do. We are very much love the comments and keep them coming. And obviously we do this for lots of reasons. But I think the one that's most important is to entertain ourselves. And you just happen to be a part of that process, which is great. That's ego that I have. I think so highly of myself. There, Nathan.
Like listening to yourself talk a little bit there, Nathan.
Anyways, we appreciate you being a part of this episode number 113. Again, like, subscribe, share this with your friends and family on YouTube and on Roku TV. We will not be here tomorrow. It's July the 4th. Go enjoy your 4th of July. We'll be producing USL League W playoff games starting here this afternoon all the way through the weekend. USLW playoffs will be on Sports Engine Play, but we'll be the official production company for USL League 2 and USLW for the playoffs, which is an awesome thing for us as an organization. So we're excited about that. But either way, happy to have you along for the ride. That's Nathan Wangler. I'm Jonathan Turner. Be back at it on Monday, same time, same place, right here on Inside the Game on the National Soccer Network. So long, everybody.